I promised a review of the Sailomat in action, so here it is. We're at latitude 29 north and about 130 west in the Pacific Ocean in July. Conditions are just about perfect with 18 or 20 knots behind us. So the wake is pretty straight, wouldn't you say? I'm not an expert after a week at sea alone by any means, but I think I've worked most of the kinks out, and here are some things I have found. So we're holding course downwind on what's basically a very deep reach, not quite downwind. And under these conditions, any boat is going to roll back and forth a little bit. And an Erickson 32.3, which is a conventional underbody, but still a fin keeler with a spade rudder, doesn't really want to go in a straight line all that much. That's why it's so much fun to sail around the buoys. But as you can see of what there is of the horizon, I wouldn't mind some sun. There's been no sun for a week. And this really reduced sail plan, just a jenny that's winged out, and a double reef in the main, which on this boat is only about 200 square feet, even when it's fully extended. We're going 6.5, 7 knots, which is just about hull speed. You can see that although the sea is quite benign, and I won't show up in the video anyway, there are periodic rollers of maybe 6, 7, 8 feet, even under these benign conditions. So the Sailomat sails the boat pretty well on course 220, which is what I'm trying to get right now. Up and down on the waves, it rolls a little bit, but it's still going in a straight line. And there you see about a 30-degree turn to the right. We're still turning to the right. We roll left. We're still 15 degrees off course. Now it comes back. And this is the result simply of these rollers. And they're not very big. When a boat's sailing downwind in front of these things, it simply hits a hill, turns the boat to one side, rolls it, and it wants to head up just as if it had been hit by a gust of wind. This wind is absolutely steady. Here's a big surf. Okay. You can see that the Sailomat, and I think all wind vanes, really only turn the wheel in small increments, which is good. Overcorrecting wouldn't help. It would actually be bad and hard on the gear. This is the Sailomat drum, which bolts onto the steering wheel. This is a Ray Marine wheel pilot, which shares the wheel with it rather well. The Sailomat control lines are supposed to be, well, obviously in line with the drum so they don't pop off. In my case, they run back to the apparatus itself. Line goes here down to this wing, the other line goes to the other wing. The Vane mechanism has a push rod. When the vane goes this way, by wind action, because as you know, this is facing into the wind. It's kind of counterintuitive, these things. It's facing into the wind like a weather vane, and when the boat moves off course, the wind strikes the side of it, presses it down. It actuates this push rod turns this gear, and the servo pendulum turns in the water and is deflected, that steering oar, by the enormous force of water going by at 7 knots. The movement of the lines is not very great either. And I think the stresses are not very great. These are not particularly tight, they don't have to be. So here's one of the things I learned. This line here is fairly important. If this is too slack, it just controls the maximum extent of deflection of the vane. It can deflect more than this. And I recently put a knot in it to shorten the deflection because we were going all over the place. I think that adds to the dampening effect, that line. This is the sensitivity control. Which is now in the desensitized position, meaning that the throw of the push rod is minimal. If you push this part in, then everything happens at an amplified rate, which turns out not to be good under these perfect conditions. We're sluicing around a bit now, as you can see. No matter what anybody says, we're sailing through waves. More on that in a second. Everybody designs their own Sailomat rig up their own way. I found it for the following reason. When you alter course, the drill is this. You set the boat on the course you want using the helm. You get it going on, say, course 220, as we have for the moment. Then, using all your powers of speed and intuition, you tighten up the control lines, lock them down, and set this mechanism here by pushing this and angling the vane into the wind so it's straight up and down. If you can do all that in less than 6 seconds, you're perfectly on course for 7 hours. It only takes me about 10 tries. What I'm getting at is, you need an easy way to adjust both lines simultaneously, and I have found that these inexpensive cam cleats are the best solution. There isn't any need for blocks here because these are just dead-ending lines. These never move. These merely keep tension on the control lines. They are the dead ends of the two control lines that are attached to the drum. And if you need to alter course in harbor, you pop these off and you have control of the wheel. The steering oar, which on the Sailomat doesn't have to be right in the middle of the back of the transom. In fact, the designer says it can be a foot or so on either side or even more without affecting performance very much. The steering oar's angulation, right now it's pretty much on center line of the boat. But if you were heeled over on this course for 1,000 miles, as in fact I will be, you could maneuver that oar over here since you're in a heeled over condition so that it's sticking down in more water. I don't find it to be very necessary. This oar never comes out of the water, and the force upon it causing the vanes to deflect, the lines to tighten, the wheel to turn, seem to work just fine with the oar in the middle of the boat. The most important thing about the Sailomat, I am convinced, has nothing to do with the Sailomat. You may notice when sailing your yacht under these conditions that you're doing quite a lot of work on the helm. If you want to keep this boat going straight, you have to anticipate that there's a wave coming. And in your hands you can feel her start to bear up, and you apply a gentle correction without even thinking about it, and keep the boat going in a straight line until you turn it over to someone who doesn't know how to sail very well, and in a minute you've broached. We get used to these things without thinking about them. We don't really bother to trim our sails under these conditions for the absolute perfect ease of steering, absolute perfect balance of the yacht. Well, with a self-steering vane, that's what it's all about. I probably worked through 3 iterations of this particular rig just to keep this boat going on force 220 without a lot of trouble and the occasional broach. Not the Sailomat's fault so much. It's easily controlled by how many reefs you have in, and particularly on this course, the position of the, well, it's not a spinnaker pole, the whisker pole, fore and aft. If the boat tends to round up too much and you let the pole forward, that helps head that off. Too much sail on one side of the boat obviously is a factor as well. The point is simply this, that in addition to knowing how to operate your wind vane, you need to know how to operate your boat. And it's not something that most of us bother to think about. How exactly balanced is my helm? Well, that's about all I know about the Sailomat. I have a personal theory that they're all the same. That a monitor is probably just as good, and that anything that you can get on your boat that fits, looks good, and that you know how to operate, is going to do as well as a wind vane can do. I could be wrong about that. Never had another wind vane. Actually, never even sailed on a boat with a monitor. So, take it for what it's worth. I put this unit on because this boat's 32 feet long. And it looked right. Shallow? We'll see. Hawaii next. Thanks for watching.